Davis Asare is a rising star training out of Kingsway in Austin, Texas with Gordon Ryan and John Danaher. He recently had a standout performance on the new UFC BJJ reality show, winning with a super fast ankle lock. What's especially cool is that he started in a small gym in Norway, a country that's had an interesting habit of producing world-class athletes from small towns, with competitors such as Espen Mathisen, Tommy Langaker, Tariq Hopstock, and Kjetil Livdo. Before this year's Europeans, Espen and I hosted a Mavericks BJJ camp, and Davis joined us to train. I took the opportunity to have him share one of his most effective systems, his Darce. And at the end, I also included a short interview with him where he talks about training in a small gym and how he transitioned into training at Kingsway in Austin, Texas with Gordon Ryan and John Danaher. So in this video, I'm going to be the cameraman because we don't trust my buddy here, Jason, to hold the camera. So I won't be in the video, but he's going to be showing a lot of great stuff.
Recently, I've been doing a lot of Darces. I have hit it a couple of times in competition and a lot of times in training and gotten a couple of details that I've been working on that has helped a lot. And there's one specific one that I really want to show you guys. So when it comes to the Darce specifically, there's one detail that I noticed that helps me when it comes to the finishing mechanics. When we go to perform the Darce, let's say my opponent goes to take a tight waist around my waist. Usually, this is not a good thing. And the reason for that is the elbow is so much further away from the head where the circumference becomes so much larger that makes it even harder for me to choke him. So obviously, to make the choke tighter, what we want to do is actually do the best as we can to take this elbow as much as we can past our opponent's center line. So he wants his elbow as far away from the center line as possible, while I want it as close or even better past the center line as possible. So what I usually do to do this, let's say I take my opponent in a dorsal position, which is the most optimal to do in a Darce situation, and my opponent goes to take a tight waist around my waist. From here, if I'm able to lock figure 4, usually just to prevent the tight waist, is to start propping up to my toes, start walking physically away from the tight waist, and then leading with my knee to block it, like so. So now when my opponent goes to take the tight waist back, it's going to be super difficult. So not only did I navigate away from that tight waist, now I'm also able to further go for that concept of taking that elbow past the center line by using my knee. So what I usually do when I have this Darce position, let's say I navigated away from that tight waist, I'm continuing using my knee. Sometimes I might even use my thigh or even my hip while I have the figure 4 lock to consistently push the elbow past the center line. So he wants the elbow to be here, while I'm using my knee, thigh, or my hip to consistently push the elbow past the center line while locking up, rotating, and getting the finish. So if you consistently think about that while having your legs, hands figure forward, thinking about getting that elbow past by using your knee while squeezing, I'll definitely think your finishing percentage will start to increase adding that concept for sure. So some additional concepts that I use to make the Darces even better when it comes to finishing them are also the finishing positions. When it comes to Darces, my opponent's reactions when it comes to defending them are always thinking about having his chest facing the same direction as my chest. So let's say I put my opponent in a Darce. A good thing for my opponent to do from here is to go belly down flat, forcing his hip down to the ground and spreading his elbows. This is gonna make it super difficult for me to finish it because his chest is pointing the same direction as my chest. The same thing applies when I go to sit through and go to roll underneath him. If my opponent does a good job by going belly up, putting all of his weight on top of me and spreading his elbows, this is going to make it way difficult for me to finish it. From here, he can start grip fighting, start extracting my hands, and then getting out. For the offensive person, it will be the opposite. So if I'm able to force my opponent in a dorsal position, this is a great position to finish the Darce, but even better is stepping through mount and finishing in a chest-to-chest position. So now when my opponent goes to finish from here or escaping, it's going to be way more difficult. And from here, when I go to rotate finish, it's going to be super tight. Another place where it's good to finish this position, also chest to chest, is by sitting up and pulling close guard. Same thing. His chest is facing towards my chest. And this is a great position to also finish the Darce. So here's a couple of setups, some famous setups and some famous I like to do from the front headlock position where we can enter into the Darce. So if we have our opponent in front headlock, we obviously have the most common one, which is the half Nelson or power Nelson, where we go palm to palm and look to crunch our opponent's head into his own chest. From here, we can use this as a fulcrum to then force him to a dorsal position and start shooting our hand through and then locking up the Darce, which is fairly common and known. What I really like to do, because obviously it depends on the length of your arms, which would benefit this entry. I have fairly long arms, so what I like to do is just immediately going into figure four. So when I get here and I'm fairly parallel to my opponent, I like to get a little angle, and from here I'm going to shoot directly into a figure four. But notice how I'm exposing my own tricep to myself. The reason for that is to go palm up like so I can expose it. And when I grip my opponent's tricep like so, I can pull everything in. But because I expose my own tricep, when I go to sit back and free my own hand, I have a much better grip on my own bicep because I overcompensated by gripping my tricep. So when I go to walk this right hand up to the far shoulder or the near shoulder in this case, I get a great bite in the figure four. I can step over and then get the finish. Another good setup that is good from here, same thing. We get an angle, but this time we want to start locking our hands palm up, both of the hands, but by the forearm. So I'm here, but I lock it up like so. Notice how my hands are palm up, and this will create a good wedge around my opponent's head. So when he goes to come out from here, it's going to be fairly difficult. Same thing, I can shoot immediately through to a figure four, sit through, and from here I can either finish underneath him or do a back roll over my right shoulder, end up on top, step over, and then get the finish. When it comes to finishing the Darce and having the most optimal position to finish it, as mentioned, we want our chest to face the same direction as our opponent's chest, right? So when it goes to finishing the Darce, a good way to end up in that position also is when we go to shoot through to the figure four, locking up like so, we want to sit through and end up underneath our opponent like this. Same thing, my chest is facing towards my opponent's chest like so, and this is going to be an optimal position to finish. But what happens is my opponent knows this rule and knows this concept. So what will happen is that my opponent will follow the same concept by doing the opposite, making him chest facing the ceiling, like so. So what we want to do, we want to follow the cycle of constantly looking to get our chest facing my opponent's chest. So a very common thing to do from here is to look to back roll over my right shoulder. Back rolling over my right shoulder, I want to pendulum my legs so I can have the ability to roll over where I can easily end up on top. From here, my opponent might know this again and start facing belly down. So this is going to be a cycle where I'm continuously looking to face my opponent. And he'll roll like so. But to end this cycle, we'll always be ending up in a mounted position where I can either finish it from the top, or when he goes to try to roll over, I can keep my chest face towards his chest and then finish it from the bottom position. Okay guys, so when it comes to actually finishing the Darce and the finishing mechanics, there's a couple of details that makes the Darce even more optimal. So let's say I'm successfully lock up figure four and I'm in this position. When it comes to finishing, everything is about the hand placement. I don't want my right hand to be below my opponent's top shoulder. Everything is about walking my right hand as up high as possible. So even if my opponent had a tight waist, still, it's possible to submit him from this position, but everything is about getting this hand up to the top shoulder. If anything is below optimal. This is optimal. And when it comes to finishing, I don't want to just squeeze blindly. When it comes to katagatames, which is a choke that includes a hand, and this is universal for any katagatame. It's universal for the anaconda, it's universal for the seated katagatame, and that is to rotate the elbow. What I mean by rotating the elbow is taking your left elbow in this case, instead of just squeezing, but retracting the left elbow to yourself, where you can actually get an optimal and good finish.
So both you, me, and Espen kind of grew up training in small gyms, and it's like a very different way of learning. Do you have any advice for people about kind of your experience learning that way? Like what made you excel training in like a smaller town in Norway, which is a very different spot than a lot of top competitors come out of? And also maybe things that you learned along the way of starting to train a new wave, and just kind of ideas about training and how to develop well overall.
When it comes to developing just skill-wise, I feel like obviously developing skill-wise you can do anywhere in the world. We have the tools of social media, we have YouTube, we have instructionals. There's so many venues where you can just use all of the resources we have like internationally to be in a small place and have a drilling partner and just attempting to drill. So what I did before I even moved to New Wave was I actually watched a ton of John's instructionals. Personally, instructionals was very helpful for me, and watching a lot of footage. But I feel like when it comes to developing skills, that's something like everyone in the world universally kind of like do, and I feel like we can do it anywhere in the world, which is very cool. When it comes to the competition thing, being in a small place is kind of different, because the problem is maybe you won't have the same resistance or the international like high-level competition resistance, which you would do being in a very well-known high-level gym. What helped me a lot was just like traveling, not only like to the States or like to the big places where all the big competition were, but I was from Norway, so just like going to like the local places like Poland or Romania, I just did all of the opens I could like in reach length that was not that far, and I got a lot of success, and that's kind of even how I ended up at New Wave, because I met Dan in Romania. So I feel like just traveling at your best of abilities are actually also a very, very useful tool as well. But to compare how it is at New Way right now, obviously I have the privilege of having high-level minds like Gordon and John to help me develop skills, and also having fellow competitors who are used to competing at the highest level, who are also giving me a lot of good training, good resistance to like kind of measure where I'm at when it comes to being at that level. So that's what has benefited me by moving there for now.